Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. Night shift workers of Reddit. What's the scariest thing that's happened to you while on shift? Please remember to like, share, hype, listen and ask for shoutouts, and subscribe.
I work at a restaurant. This happened a couple of months ago, and I'm still freaked out to open and by myself. It was around 5 a.m. I was going in to open like usual, and I was the only one there. I went about everything like normal, turned on the flat grill, deep fryers, and steam. Getting ready to head out, I saw someone by the door on the outside. I thought one of the other cooks got there, but no one was there when I got out. I thought that was a little weird, but I wanted to get everything done, so I continued on. Well, I kept looking into the dining room because I could have swore I saw somebody out there, but I know I was the only one there. That's when I heard my Bluetooth speaker turn on by itself. I noped the hell out of there. I hung out outside until the other cook got there around 10 minutes later. I told him what happened. We went in and nothing happened. My speaker was off and we didn't see anybody. Ever since then, I refused to open by myself, no matter what. One story and one observation. Many years ago, I worked the night shift at a warehouse that was just outside of town. No buses, so I was biking it as I didn't drive. The route I normally took seemed a little long, so I checked Google Maps, and there was indeed a shorter route that lopped about a kilometer off, so I planned it out and off I went that night. One thing I didn't think about is how different rural areas feel at night compared to the day. Now, partway along this route, it just cut into a forest. I mean, I'm still on a road, there are still lamps, but it's a very sudden transition. Terraced houses, then forest. What was an airy wood in daylight is a black and foreboding at night, and 300 meters past that, a disused railway bridge. Picturesque during the day, spooky at night. I'm going through it, and suddenly mad chuckling was all around me. It was at this point I discovered the turbo mode built into every bicycle. It's called ball-clenching fear. I shot out of there like I was fired from a cannon onto a hedged lane where there are no streetlights, and whispering and movement in the hedges. Man-powered land speed records were set that day, as I managed to come into work a quivering, gasping wreck, but also a very early wreck. I later learned the mad laughter was the sound of my bike bouncing back off the rail bridge, and rural hedges always sound that way with wind and hedge creature. The observation, however, scares me to this day. I worked the doors as a doorman for a while, and the scariest thing out there is man. The amount of people, almost always men. I understand that evil isn't always exclusive to men, but there are types of evil that are more prevalent due to men's size. That we're just out there looking for a victim still scares me. Hunting for violence or gratification, and not caring who gets hurt as long as they get what they want. I stepped in where I could, helped who I could, but until they actively strike, your hands are tied, and I was continuously haunted by the ones slipped through. That, more than anything, is why I stopped working doors. ER nurse here, working in a very busy metropolitan ER in a city known for gun violence. In this ER, there's only one room you can't see into from anywhere in the unit, and it's a negative pressure, which means you have to go through 2 doors to get into it, and the doors are always closed. Get a patient, go in alone, start running through my regular assessment, triage questions, etc. Guy starts getting agitated and acting like an asshole and looking like he might swing on me, so I start to wrap it up. Leave the room, and there's 3 city cops and about 8 of our security guards jogging toward the room, which is very unusual, because patients wild out all the time. There's so much security doesn't usually have a big sense of urgency, and cops were a little unusual unless the patient came in under arrest. Turns out, the guy used a fake name to get through registration. His real name was banned from every ER in the city, which, if you know ER stuff, it's incredibly difficult to get banned from an ER, let alone all of them in a whole city. He was banned for being routinely violent with staff, and he'd brought a gun into 3 different hospitals. Yeah, they found a gun on him that time too. I actually took my lunch break that night. I work nights at a hotel. I've seen ghosts, but they don't really scare me. I don't even initially realize there's anything other than flesh and blood guests. Nope. The scariest experience I've had was when a 7-foot-tall drunkard with rage issues tried to hold me personally accountable for the fact his pregnant wife was hiding from him somewhere on the property. He spent most of the night trying to hunt her down, to no avail, until his buddy spotted her getting ice. He had been busy throwing things at me, so I was in the back office calling the cops. Meanwhile, he left, broke into her room, and trashed the place while screaming at her. She came downstairs in a panic, convinced we were going to hold her accountable for his actions. I escorted her into the back office with me, called the GM and AGM to let them know what's happening and why I'd brought a guest into an off-limits area. He's forbidden from returning. If he does, he will get arrested on the spot. Apparently he's come back to town on multiple occasions, but he stays at a budget location on the other side of the highway, the kind of property that would tolerate his bullshit. I worked a movie theater in LA that was located on the street, so no protective plazas or parking garages. It was Thursday night, which meant movies had to be torn down and new ones built. So I was finally getting ready to leave at 3:30 a.m., turned off all the lights, and stood in the middle of the lobby looking at my phone. To my left was the handicapped bathrooms with doors we always kept open, with the little stopper attached to the door that you flip with your foot. Now, I knew I was alone. The closing manager had checked theaters or bathrooms and left at 1 a.m., and the cleaning crew didn't come in until after 5 a.m. But there I stood in the lobby when I heard the metallic sound of the stopper flipped up and into place against the door, and the door swinging itself shut. My eyes went huge, and I busted across to the front doors, then pushed them shut and ran to my car parked in the front spot. I sat there for a minute looking in my mirror to see if anyone came out, but I decided fuck that noise and drove home. I have no idea what it actually was. We'd all seen things in that theater and also had a range of homeless living around the theater who sometimes, though rarely, snuck inside. Not a night shift worker, but some of these stories have remained and reminded me of this. I used to work in an art gallery that was a conversion of an old jail. I had to do close on my own really regularly, which involved turning off the lights in each converted cell or room. One at the very end of the longest hallway always freaked me the fuck out. Just really unsettling energy, and I always felt really scared walking to, and especially from that cell, down the corridor. I personally never had any actual moments more than that specific feeling in that one room. But once after I'd been feeling that way for a while, we had a visitor who I greeted with on the way in, and we had a long chat about how it was her first time in our town, and how excited she was to see the exhibition. Not 5 minutes later, she was walking briskly out of there. I was surprised, as it takes about 1 hour to do a full view of the gallery, and she seemed so excited, so I politely asked her what she thought of the exhibition. She then said, I'm so sorry, but I have to get out of here. I know this sounds ridiculous, but I swear something touched the back of my hair in that back cell. She was the only visitor in there at the time. I then also was shown a newspaper article of when they first opened the gallery, and they did a sage burning ceremony to clear any bad energy, and there's a photo along with an article of how the sage stick went up in flames. For 2 years I worked overnight stocking at an Office Depot. Just me and another guy locked in the store with the alarm set. The only way out was the emergency exit. The first weird experience we had was hearing footsteps. We were in the back office making signs for the ad, and we heard footsteps walking all the way down the hallway to the office. I remember we both stopped cold and just stared at each other. It got all the way to the door, then stopped. No one was there. This happened at least a dozen times. One night, we were working and around 2 a.m., the store phone rang. My coworker answered it, then after a few seconds, hung up. Rang again. He answered, then hung up. Rang again, rang and rang and rang. When it became clear they weren't going to stop, he answered again. You have the wrong number. Stop calling. At this point, my interest is piqued, so I asked him what's up. He tells me this girl keeps calling. The phone rings again, so he puts it on speaker. She's crying. Why are you ignoring me? Why won't you just talk to me? I tell her, ma'am, you have the wrong number. Please stop calling. Click. We hang up. It rings again. I tell my coworker, dude, she's probably just crazy. Just ignore it. He answers. To this day, I get chills remembering this. She's still crying. I'm not crazy, she yells. Then click. She never called again. Scared the crap out of me. From then on, we would see people out of the corner of our eyes, hear voices, etc. When I went on my honeymoon, they brought in a dead guy to cover my shift. He lasted 3 days before he quit. I ran into him a few weeks after I got back and asked him what happened, why he quit. He said he couldn't do it anymore. He kept seeing shit and hearing voices. Every person that ever worked nights there saw or heard things they couldn't explain.
Well, not too much in the ways of shout-outs today, so I just wanted to say hello to everybody, and I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. As someone who does on occasion work night shifts too, in big empty buildings some nights, I've never really experienced anything creepy. I know we've talked about this before. I'm not saying I want to either, but hearing these stories, you try to think with your logical mind, like, oh, this is this or this is that, but there's something to it, so pretty cool. Anybody else work night shifts?
I was working as a dispatcher on the midnight shift. It was around 2 to 3 a.m. and I was completely alone in the building. Completely alone. I knew that for a fact because I had checked the building myself and secured the locks manually and with our electronic system. I was alone. So I'm sitting at my desk with all the lights off and it's dead silent. But then I hear someone walking into the area where the officers' desks were and along the back wall out of my sight, and I could tell the person was wearing heavy police or military style boots by the sound. Now, where I was sitting, it would have been nearly impossible for anyone to get past me without seeing them, but as I wasn't really paying attention, and I assumed it was a supervisor sneaking around, basically spying on us, which was pretty normal at the time, so I decided I was going to sneak up on him and surprise him. I creeped into the office, through the only door, and jumped out where the person should have been. No one was there. I checked the entire office, and then building again. No one was there. I checked the cameras. No one was there. I turned every single light on for the rest of my shift, and double-locked myself into the dispatch center. Not like that would have done much good, but it made me feel better in the moment. I work at a nursing home. We all joke that it's haunted, and most of us have throwaway anecdotes of seeing shadowy figures in the halls, but this one really got me. One night I answered a call bell. The resident said someone had moved her fan, and she didn't know why. She asked me to put it back. The fan was indeed about 2 feet away from where it had been the last time I was in. For context, this woman and about 85% of the people in that wing could not walk, and I hadn't seen anyone else awake on my rounds. Then she said, I just don't know what she was doing down there on her hands and knees. I felt this visceral wave of fear over my whole body. The only person that could have moved the fan was the RN, but she had no reason to do so, and she certainly wouldn't have done so on her hands and knees. So, the lady with the fan had been confused that night, and it's a memory care unit. Hallucinations certainly happen, but the fan was really moved. The fear I felt was so all-consuming and primal, it felt like staring at a venomous snake. I just don't know what she was doing down there on her hands and knees. I've had plenty of residents ask me about their hallucinations. Is that man still on my chair? Where did the little girl go? But never has one felt so bone-chillingly wrong to hear. I put her fan back and stepped back into the hall. The man in the room across from hers had left his radio on that night, and at that time it was playing just static. I felt too unsettled to go in and fix it or turn it off, so I went down the hall seeking a distraction. On my next set of rounds, his radio was fine again. He's a deaf man who sleeps like a log and doesn't move his arms, so I don't think he had anything to do with it. When I started to tell my coworker about it, I'd only described the fan and not yet mentioned the radio. She immediately said, "Oh, it was probably just recently deceased resident coming to say hi. You know how often she used to wander in the fan woman's room? Recently deceased resident had passed away in the room with the radio." Not particularly scary for me, but when I was 19, I worked overnight at a hotel. Only employee on the property for most of the shift. Around 1 or 2 a.m., a couple and their kids came to the lobby in a panic with all their luggage. The husband said they had to leave. I informed them that they'd still be charged for the night, blah blah blah, and he said fine, but they had to go. I thought maybe a kid had to go to the ER or something. The wife took the kids to the car, and the husband said to me, "Did anything happen in that room?" I didn't understand what he meant, and he repeated his question. He said that all of a sudden, the TVs were turning on and off, which was actually not too unusual for the old hotel, but he said that both kids at the same time sat straight up in bed and started sobbing, not really awake until the father shook them a bit. They didn't know they were crying. The family was convinced the room was haunted and a ghost was targeting the children. They couldn't get out fast enough. When they left, I decided to go all Ghostbusters, armed with a flashlight and my phone to record, and walked around the room saying hello to the empty space for a few minutes before I got bored. Later, I asked my coworker if the place was haunted, and she said that once there was a medium staying at this hotel who told her there were multiple distinct spirits around. I forget her exact words, and she described each one, but nothing seemed malevolent. My conclusion was either there's a mean ghost hiding out, or the kids played a seriously messed up prank. I work with a lot of nights, being a prison officer. A lot of stuff goes down on nights, but I prefer them. I worked our safety unit for a long time with all the real crazy inmates and self-harmers. I came in after a few days off to find one of the worst self-harmers with his lights off, and went, oh no. Usually they have minimal lighting, so we can see them on camera, and thought the door if they start to harm themselves. I rang the supervisor, and was told he had been behaving, so they let him have the lights off. I knew exactly what he was going to do. I had to check on him every hour by going to the window and shining my torch. He was sound asleep. I thought I was in the clear. Then at about 3:30 a.m. the intercom buzzes, and I see it's him, and my heart just sank. I said something like, "Yeah mate, what's up?" And I hear this faint voice say, "Miss, you'd better come down here." So I grabbed my torch, head to the cell, and he said, "Miss, you'd better turn on the light." And as I turned the light on, I noticed I was standing in a huge pool of thick blood, which was seeping under the door. I got back to the office, called the code, and hit the lights. It was like a massacre. Blood all over the walls, the roof, the floor. He was with his arm basically severed at the elbow, just hanging by some skin. The way he just stood there like a horror movie. He was as white as a ghost. And that wasn't even his worst act of self-harm. But it was just really rattling. He basically severed his arm with one single razor blade and had secreted inside of him. Late to the party, but mine was my own fault. I work in the warehouse of a nuke plant. Sometimes there's a round-the-clock work that requires me to be there just in case they need a part and aren't able to wait the normal call-out period, 75 minutes max responded time. But usually during these jobs, I don't see anyone all night, and my only real job is to stay awake. So one of those nights, like 8 years ago, I was bored and started reading a new book I had just bought at a thrift store, The Perfect Husband by Lisa Gardner. Long story short, I read the whole book in one 12-hour shift. The villain was a former police officer who preferred petite blonde women, while on the lam, he would disguise himself as security officers. So at 6 a.m., I, a petite blonde, was leaving the plant, and a security officer, who matched the description of the character perfectly, just so happens to be leaving at the same time, but was about 100 feet behind me, y'all. I completely freaked myself out. It's literally 3/4 of a mile walk from my warehouse to the parking lot, with him just slightly behind me or over half of that. I was almost in a full-blown panic attack by the time I got to my car, and then I drove around town twice before going home to make sure no one was following me. To this day, I find myself being distant with that guard. Used to work at Wendy's night shift for years. Just before closing at 1 a.m., before it was changed to 12, a man tried to order, but it was 2 minutes before closing and 2 minutes ago fast. We shut down everything and were finishing up cleaning. He got pissed when we told him the unexpected news and closed the window. I told my coworker to lock the window ASAP because I had a bad feeling about him. The way he didn't blink after we told him, his eyes just hugged, bloodshot and gross, like he was holding in a scream of frustration. So she locked the window, and sure enough, it was right. He ended up driving through at least 6 times, and when we didn't answer him, he screamed and punched our window, even getting out and beating the front door. We called security. We had to wait 30 minutes to leave. Not a night shift per se, but I was up at 3 a.m. ironing my shirt for the next day, military basic training. I'd been doing this for a couple of weeks straight, so the fatigue was getting to me. Anyway, this night in particular, the guy in the space next to me got up to see what I was doing, and we started chatting about something or other. I don't think it was anything important, probably just asking me why I was still up ironing. Anyway, I put down my iron and turned to face him, and he'd gone. I was like, "Antonio, are you there?" No response. I went to his bed space, and he was there, sound asleep, and looked like he hadn't moved in hours. This caused me some degree of consternation, so I decided it was high time I went to bed. I had to make a quick trip to the toilet before going to bed, and walking down there and back, I kept seeing flashes of light and shadows in the periphery of my vision, which would have been more alarming if I wasn't so dog-tired. After that, I stopped doing any kind of prep after 9 p.m. Because of that, I'm reluctant to work nights at all, and when I find myself on them, I do as little as possible. Sleep deprivation and upset to my circadian rhythm isn't worth any amount of money to me. I used to work as a barback in a busy club in Ybor City. One of my jobs was to drag these garbage cans stuffed with bottles out to the alley where they were machined. We'd dump them in. The alley was super gnarly. Some people shooting up, some people sucking and shitting, throwing up, you name it. This was the early 90s, so there wasn't cameras everywhere, just near the immediate area near our back door. One night, I was out there and finishing dumping the bottles and turned to see feet and legs sticking out from behind a random pile of trash at a neighboring business. I assumed it was some drunk passed out back there, but I went to look and the guy wasn't moving. I moved some debris that was covering his upper body and almost shit myself. I definitely screamed. Dude was dead, but eyes wide open. Scared me to death. I told my manager and they called the cops. The consensus was that the guy was back there pissing, and someone gave him some blunt force trauma and then finished him off by strangulation. Performing medical experiments on her, I wasn't. I actually knew this woman, and normally she's really sweet, but she was just having some kind of episode, so I was gently trying to talk her down. That's when she pulled a pair of bolt cutters from somewhere and came after me. They were bigger than her, so I have no idea how she was hiding those on her person. So there's footage of me on the security cameras full of fighting this little psychotic homeless woman. The best part is that as I'm literally rolling on the floor and physically fighting this person, hotel guests were still coming and asking me to help with luggage or for another key, just like everything was totally normal, so I hate people. Edit. Also, one time a hooker robbed a guy. Happens all the time. I tell guests that they have to contact the police themselves in that case, and they never do. But then the guy asks for a band-aid. No problem. My bellman runs one up. He comes back white as a sheet, and he's super African. He suggests I go assess the situation. This is a bad sign. So I go to the guy's room, and he yells, "Come in." The room is covered in blood, just sprayed everywhere. I've never seen anything like it. He comes up out of the bathroom and says, "Don't call the cops." As he's standing there, blood is shooting out of him. Arterial spray is the term, I think. The hooker used a bottle or piece of glass from somewhere and cut him shoulder to neck to belly, right open. So I called an ambulance, obviously. My shifts can range from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Saturdays, and this was on one of my long Saturday shifts. I work at a roller rink, and our session was from 7:30 to 9:30 p.m. I'm 14 in this story, so I'd like for you all to keep that in mind. I have my worker's permit, and I'm legally allowed to work at 14 in my state. But it's about 8:45 at night, little more than halfway through my shift, when this old guy comes up and starts chatting with me and my coworker. The man is clearly intoxicated, which was the first major red flag. Who shows up drunk to a child's birthday party? A lot of people. Anywho, this guy is still talking, but slowly starting to make my coworker and I uncomfortable. At one point, I'm leaning with my hands against the counter, and he puts his hands over mine while saying, "Oh, come on, girls. Don't you want to come out with me?" Major red flag. My coworker looks at me and goes, "Go get Andy." Andy is the owner of the place I work for. He's not a small guy either. He's a muscular guy with a shit ton of tattoos. Anywho, I get my boss and he comes out and starts talking to the guy, eventually kicking him out for denying and resisting to talk to him. My coworker and I are still scared at this point, but just happy the old creep left.